Nick Sirianni has half the locker room, and the other locker room that's inside the locker room goes to Howie. This is the same shit that you had with Foles and Wentz. Usually I write some cliff notes down here. See this right here? I got a bunch of guys here because Angelo Cataldi comes on. Look what I got on here. Nothing. Because I don't need any questions. Because you know why? To me, what question could I possibly ask Tone for quitting? Let's bring my friend in for the segment. Our friend Tone. Breaking the Giant game down. This is more than just the. This is 5 or 6. This has gone on for 3 months now. It's like, I don't know. I mean, the Giant game was just the ending. I can't believe that they quit like that in the first 2 minutes of the game.
Yeah, it was pretty hard to watch.
It was hard to watch.
It was hard to watch because the moment the game started, I felt the quit. The moment the game started, it didn't seem like an Eagles. It didn't feel or look like a trademark Eagles effort. It looked off brand. It looked like they completely mailed it in, or didn't even. As a matter of fact, they didn't even lick the stamp.
They looked like the 4-11-1 team.
They looked bad. They looked really bad, and it's easy to get mad at the bricklayer. It's easy to get mad at the mason, or it's easy to get mad at the electrician or the plumbers. It's easy to do that. But when are we going to start pointing the finger at the contractor, the guy who laid out the blueprint? When are we going to start pointing the finger at that guy who gave us the faulty plans, who gave us something that's not sustainable, or who can't seem to sustain success in and of himself? So for me, there are so many issues with this team, but it always trickles from the top down. And if there's going to be any semblance of prosperity from this daunting moment that we're feeling with the Philadelphia Eagles, if there's going to be any sort of prosperity, and I spoke about this on Sports Take earlier with my guy Rob Ellis, the players and the coaches can't be the only ones looking in the mirror here. The owner has to look in the mirror and take ownership of the product he's put out there. The general manager / executive, whatever title he has, they keep creating new titles for this guy. He needs to take ownership of the product he's put out there. The personnel.
You really think they believe that this problem is them?
That's a hell of a question. And if you're asking me straight up, do I think they think this is their issue? No, I don't think they do. And that's the sad part about it.
They hired unqualified people at the beginning of the year. They brought in people like Shaq Leonard and Nicholas Morrow and all the rest of these guys, and they thought they were going to coach them into Ray Lewis with inferior coaches. The people that made those hires, like you say, it's one thing if you're the contractor, but if you own the business and you're putting faulty parts in this company, and when you're building it and faulty outlets and doing all that, it's not going to work. They put faulty equipment on this Eagle team this year, who was so close to being. You're closer this year to winning a Super Bowl than you were a year ago.
They spent more. They spent more money on the cosmetics rather than the foundation of the house. You follow me?
Yeah.
They spent more money on the tile and the backsplash and the kitchen and all that kind of stuff. This team was doomed from the start. It was doomed from the start. And it was because Howie Roseman didn't do a good enough job loading up on his defense. He didn't do a good enough job putting the right people in position to succeed. And again, it starts from the top. When you establish a philosophy or a culture of we're the ones who push the buttons, We're the ones who give you the target and you just shoot. It's kind of hard to really bring some high quality coaches in here when they already know what the dynamic is. So
Man.
I firmly believe, and I said this earlier, and I said it within like the first 30 seconds of Sports Take. That football team quit on Nick Sirianni yesterday. They quit on Nick Sirianni yesterday, and they quit on him after that Niners game. And it's funny. You said something earlier, right?
They ever really played for him?
And that's a million. That's the $50 million question right there. Did they ever play for him? And here's what's fascinating about it all, right? They're playing like a team who doesn't respect their head coach. They're playing like a team who knows he's not the one who's really pulling the strings or pushing the buttons. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but don't get mad at Nick.
No, and that's what I was about to get to, right? I'm going to always shit on Nick. That's not going to change. But the fact of the matter is Nick really the crux of the issue? No. Nick's, you know what it is? Nick is a symptom of a virus, of a sickness. That's what Nick is. Nick is a symptom. He's not the diagnosis. You follow me?
Yeah, you know what Nick is? He's the shit that people were throwing out there about the COVID shot, saying that it'll cure everything. And then guess what? You need 7 more COVID shots.
Hey, be careful, man. They flag us on YouTube for that.
I got you there, but that's kind of what this is. You think you're going to fix something when you know, quite frankly, I heard you too earlier when you went like this. Hey, man, that guy should be fired. Why?
And you know
what? They could bring another virus in?
That's the easy fix, right? That's the easy thing to do.
That's the cosmetic fix.
Yeah. And of course, I'm emotional, right? I love this team to death. And I still don't believe Nick Sirianni is the guy, though, still to this day. I mean, I don't believe it. So I do think they need to look in another direction eventually. But what's the point if the method is not going to change the madness? You dig me? So the owner has in the past. And that's the only silver lining. The owner. And here's the thing. I think the owner, if I had to give credit to Jeffrey Lurie, he strikes me as the kind of guy who just wants to do whatever it takes to win. Him alone. He strikes me as a guy who just wants to do whatever it takes. Howie, on the other hand, strikes me as a guy who's moving with ego and moving with a sense of control that needs some sort of checks and balances.
And deceptiveness.
I don't trust Howie Roseman right now. Is Howie Roseman a top 5, top 10 GM? Sure. But that's not what we're talking about here, right?
But wait, he's a GM's role is to oversee personnel departments, pro and college, and construct deals and to scour rosters. Do I think he's good at some of that? I think he's great at the constructing of the contracts. I think he's great at getting ahead of contracts.
You know what his problem is? I'm so good. I love where you're going. You know what his problem is? His problem is, and this is what separates him from...
His success has intoxicated him.
Yes, but also this is what separates guys like what's the GM in San Francisco name? John Lynch. This is what separates guys like John Lynch, Brett Veach, the guy in Houston,
Nick Caserio.
Yeah, this is what separates guys like that from a guy like Howie Roseman. Those guys know what they're good at and what they're not, and they accept it. Howie Roseman, on the other hand, he believes that he has it all figured out. He believes that he is what he thinks he is.
Yeah, he thinks he's Jerry Jones.
And the fact of the matter is, you're astute at contracts. You do an amazing job at scouring the free agent and trade market. You craft deals that are team friendly, and the player doesn't even realize how team friendly it is. You do a good job at.
He's great at that.
You do a good job at empowering your front office people. You know what I mean? You pump out front office talent often. You know what I mean? He has a skill set.
He does.
Don't get it twisted. He has a skill set. You know how to accumulate resources. He knows how to balance the checkbook. He has a skill set, and those are all important aspects of the job. The money, it's such an important aspect, and he knows how to handle that.
But remember, he's a
weakness.
capologist.
Exactly.
He's not any more than that.
Exactly. And that's what he doesn't want to accept about himself. You can't evaluate talent. You've never been good at it. Never been good at it. Never been good at it. Let's stop pretending. You know, listen, a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So if I take 10 shots, I'm bound to hit one. So
more with him, 30.
Right. Let's go back 2019 draft class on 2019 draft class on up. Who's making an impact on defense from 2019 on up?
Carter.
Who's making an impact? Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis when he doesn't have a cheeseburger in his hand. I mean, what are we doing?
We haven't had any impact from his drafts in the last 3 years.
No impact from the linebacker position. None. No impact from the DBs. None.
Tone, think of this. You brought a guy's name up. You don't think there's any coincidence that when Nick Caserio left New England, when Brady left, all of a sudden, the Houston Texans are now champions of the AFC South. And he's turned that entire thing around when you had quality front office people like Kim and Scott Pioli. Okay.
And the coach that was all in line. They were all in line with one single goal. And they knew what
Bill wanted. They all worked with the personnel.
And they knew their roles.
Front office.
They know their roles. Let's make sure we emphasize that. They
know
their roles. They know what they're good at and what they're not.
Too. That's ownership giving. See, when you sign that 3-year contract, Mass, thank you. That's really kind of you. When you gave him that contract extension, you gave a contract extension that was too vague. You didn't define, everyone's got a defined role in that building but Howie. You understand that, right? And look what they did. Dude, Baker Mayfield had a better passing season this year than Jalen Hurts.
How's that possible?
How's that possible? Seriously, how's that possible? I mean, you know what's crazy? People go like this to me. They go, "Hey, you know what? The Bucs suck." I heard Rob saying this. The Bucs suck. They're no good. I'm like this. Well, Mayfield's got 4,000 passing yards, 28 touchdowns and 10 picks, 94-6. He's got a better passing season than Hurts. Rashid White, 990, 6 touchdowns and 64 catches, 549 receiving.
Yeah, I think what he
you got 2 receivers over $1,000. Dude, don't go if you go to sleep on the Bucs, you will get beat.
I think what he was trying to explain was like, although the Bucs, their record is what it is, and so on and so forth, the Eagles can lose to them.
You only got 2 more wins than them.
Right. And I think that's the point he was making. The fact that the Bucs are what they are. And the Eagles can get beat by them.
You look like the Bucs.
Right. The Eagles are so bad that they're only 1.5 point favorites. Think about that.
The Eagles have dropped so far on how people look at them. They think they're the Bucs.
You know what I said?
Look earlier? At the point spread.
You know what I said earlier? I said, typically in a game like this, the better team would have a certain mystique, a certain edge about them that the lesser team would have to come in and they kind of look at it as, look, man, we're just happy to be here, right? The Eagles have lost all their edge. They've lost all their mystique. They've lost all their equity in the NFL to the point where people are looking at them like they can get beat by anybody. Why would I ever bet on that team? Why would I ever give them a 3-point spread, whatever it may be? Like, people are looking, the Eagles have lost their edge. They've lost their swagger. They've lost their juice. They've lost their notoriety. They're no longer looked at as the team to beat anymore. They're looked at as a team that can be beat.
How about this one here, Tone? So in the game when it was 4th and 4, I went like this. Okay, don't go for it. You're on the road. It was still 7-7, Cowboys in Washington. And I said, make the shittier team go 90. They'll make a mistake. They were kind of waffling around the Giants at the beginning of the game. Then they realized they had wide open windows. As the game went on, more confidence happened for Tyrod, and you saw him pick it up. But at that time, they were still wobbling around a little bit.
Yeah.
And I said, make a 5-win Giant team have to go 90 yards. Instead, they don't get it. They give the ball half field. They go 50 yards.
Desperation.
I went like this. They're going to beat. That's shitty coaching.
Desperation. Not reading the moment. You know, desperation. It's sheer desperation. Panicking. All of it. All the above. Yeah. All of it.
You know, and again, it's not that you're like this. It's a division opponent. You're not playing well. Give yourself a chance and your defense a chance. If you know your defense can't stop anything,
give him at least a full field.
Why in the world would you give a team half a field? Inexperienced.
And those are the moments I look at Nick Sirianni like, what are we doing here?
I was like this. I go, why would you? As soon as that happened, I went, the Giants are going to win this game.
I knew it early. I knew the Giants.
You kind of knew it 2 minutes in when you saw the effort.
Listen, the moment the Giants went up 10-0, I said they're winning.
Oh, yeah.
The moment they kicked that field goal, no, I'm sorry, they kicked the field goal first, then they scored a touchdown. The moment they scored that touchdown, and also, it wasn't even really the score. I just saw how they moved the ball in the first drive.
The body language.
The way the Giants moved the ball in the first drive and the way the Eagles were chasing, I'm like, oh, they're not winning this game. There's no way they're winning this game. They're not even playing with it's almost like they're playing on two different speeds right now.
How about this? Do you think that team, dude, I disagree with some people. They quit on Nick. I think they quit on everyone. Nick, Howie, and I say this.
I see you're just taking this step further. You're saying it's just deeper than just Nick. I got you.
Here's what they did. And people keep going, Sills, how can they go from 10-1 to losing 5 or 6?
Easy.
Here's what happened again. They were winning with they were playing with all of their heart. Let me tell you something. If you played with the same passion against the Giants that you had in that game against the Bills, they win that game on Sunday. If you play with the passion that you had where you had to gut out like the Chiefs, you're going to win that game on Sunday.
Stay right there. Stay right there. Something happened. I'm gled you went there.
Yeah,
Something happened between Bills week and Niners week.
Here. They finally looked at it. When you have people making comments like this, Tone, hey, and I don't know who said this because I heard this on you guys' show. I don't know who said this, but hey, whatever is called, play to the best of your ability on what's called. When I heard you guys say that, I went like this. Fuck that. If I think I'm in a game and I think you keep putting me in a position to fail, this is not about that. So what's happened here is the players have played company policy, and the company has driven them into bankruptcy.
Do you think the players are tired of? Do you think at this point now, what we're seeing on the field is the players are somewhat silently rebelling?
Yes.
It feels that way. It feels that way. It looks like
all you needed to see was the effort.
Look, it's at a point now where they don't even care about winning. No. They look like they're so fed up with what's been going on internally. And look, again, this has been a buildup, right? That's why I feel like this isn't something that just happened. This has been a buildup.
The quitting on Sunday is so, for a professional football team, Tone, I have never in my life seen a team 2 minutes in, you still had a shot at the NFC East because it was 7-7. Then it went, actually, Washington got up on them.
They got up 10-7.
Okay. And they had to come. You had no idea how that thing was going to play out. What happened with like the second quarter? Nick waved the white flag. I'm like,
yep.
Why would he wave the white flag like that? If you were not going to, I told you this. Remember I said this on Friday? Listen, why don't you just concede the game?
In hindsight, you know what's I'm so glad you said that.
Just concede it, the NFC East. You could have got your mind right. You could have kept AJ healthy. Hurts would have been more healthier. If you were going to do that instead of being half-ass in, then why do that and put yourself in harm's way when you were half in? Listen, look at the two things, Tone, that give you the notion that that organization does things halfway. The way you hired Desai, the way you went about that game on Sunday, they do things halfway. They don't have conviction on anything they do.
They sat Fletcher Cox but played everybody else. It was weird.
I would have sat Jason Kelsey.
It made absolutely no sense. You know, you asked me on Friday, which do I think is the better decision, to play the guys or sit the guys? At that time, and obviously hindsight is 2020, but at that time, my mindset was, well, you still have something to play for. You can win the division. That's one. For two, you guys need to go into they need to go into the playoffs with even an inkling of some kind of confidence or flow. Anything. So those were my two main things that I was latching on to and why they should play. And your mindset was what you just said. Well, look, at the end of the day, take a breather, get your mind right. Listen, 9 times out of 10, the Cowboys going to beat the Commanders anyway. Just concede.
In though, that was my concern.
And what we saw on Sunday was part of what I said and part of what you said. The half in, half out type of shit. You know what I mean? You sit Fletcher Cox and he's healthy, but you play Jason Kelsey, you play Lane Johnson, and you play all these other guys for all that. And again, hindsight is 2020. You would have been better off sitting everybody.
Yep.
And at least we can say, well, you sat everybody.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mess with you mentally.
And you could have came out of that game more spiritually sound, and you could have came out of that game healthier. Instead, now you
more
have
spiritually sound.
More questions, and you're more banged up going into the Buck game. By the way, you're not having AJ Brown in that game.
So the last thing I heard about him is after the game, no crutches, no brace, no limp. They likely was just trying to keep. Once they saw he went down, they probably felt like they dodged a bullet, and they probably thought to themselves that we're not putting him back out. I think he plays though. I think he plays. Now I will say this though: you lost Sidney Brown to a torn ACL. You lost Reed Blankenship to a groin injury. Now you're not gonna have neither of those players on Sunday, in my opinion. The groin, you played the game. Tell me how unpredictable a groin is.
Never happened.
So therefore, you're going to be without 2 safeties.
And you're already horrible back there.
And you're already horrible back there. So in hindsight, was it worth it?
No.
Obviously not. And it was easy for me to say that now when I already had my mind made up on Friday. But the result is the result, and I had to react to the result. So it was clearly a poor decision to start those guys.
Again, if you're on the sideline and you're the coach and you see the players don't want to play, he should have just pulled everyone. He should have just taken everyone off the field, got into the locker room. And you know what, too, Tone? I'm sick and tired of people not reading the freaking riot act. You should have got on that thing on Monday or on Sunday and read them the riot act saying, well, I'll tell you what, that was without a doubt the worst effort I have seen since I've been the head coach of the Eagles. And for us to go into the playoffs with that mentality is absolutely, we need to have a come to Jesus conversation as coaches and as players. Because an effort like that team didn't have anything to play for. And they kicked our ass.
Two weeks in a row, you came across 2 teams that had nothing to play for.
Why won't they have constructive criticism? Dude, they baby. You know what Jalen Hurts' problem is this year? They babied him and didn't coach him. I'm not saying you have to scream at Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
I'm saying you have to coach him. Remember I told you, people are like, well, this guy knows this guy since he was 3. I'm like, what in the world does that have to do with
anything? Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. You've covered this game for a long time. Let me ask you this, right? I'm trying to word this correctly so I can make sure I get the not the answer I'm looking for, but make sure you know what I'm trying to ask you. When you're coaching a $50 million, when you're coaching a franchise quarterback, right? And again, you've covered this game for a long time and you've seen it on every level. Does it take a certain type of coach to be able to have the confidence or the balls, to put it simply? Does it take a certain type of coach, a certain caliber of coach, to be able to openly coach the franchise quarterback without feeling like he's overstepping? Like, I guess what I'm saying is, do you? I guess what I'm saying is,
I'll tell you flat out right now. If Jalen Hurts had Mike Tomlin as his coach, he'd be in the Hall of Fame.
Because I don't think
when he turns the ball over, you think Mike's going to pat him on the head and tell him it's okay? Or do you think Mike Tomlin's going to read him the riot act and hold his feet to the fire like he did Roethlisberger? Ben's going to the Hall of Fame too, dude.
And
okay.
And Ben hated him, but guess what? He loved winning more.
That's right. Hey, by the way, I don't want you to love me. I want you to respect me. I want you to play for me. I don't give a shit about that love stuff, dog. You got to do right by me. Yep. Okay? And Mike Tomlin, can you imagine Mike Tomlin? Okay, how do you think Tomlin, how do you think Tomlin would have came out of that game in a press conference on Sunday after his Steelers? By the way, they've just won 3 straight with some dude named Mason Rudolph. And they're
Christmas
in the
passed already.
With a shitty quarterback. I have no idea. And I look at that guy, and there were rumors a couple weeks ago about him potentially them moving on from him.
I wish
Why
they
in
would.
the world would you move on from that guy?
Listen. You said something earlier, right? You said something earlier when it came to Bill Belichick. You said the only people who don't like Bill Belichick or who thinks his job is in question are people who don't know football, or people who or
don't have legacies.
Or people who don't have legacies, or just don't know what's going on, right? Same thing goes for Mike Tomlin. You think the Roonies are looking at Mike Tomlin like he's a problem?
Absolutely not. They're looking at the quarterback position as a problem. And
exactly.
you know what the Steelers do? I'll tell you the difference between the Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles. Do you know what the difference is? The Steelers look at the issues with the Steelers as a quarterback issue. The Eagles look at the problem with the quarterback, a coaching issue now.
Listen to this.
They're not looking at it like you needed to develop the guy more. You stunted his growth this year. You know what you've done to him? You've turned him into Baker Mayfield.
Listen to this, man. When it comes to the Steelers, it's almost astounding. When you really look at it, right? This year, they made the they made the playoffs 10-7, right? Last year, 2022,
7 seed.
9-8. They just missed the playoffs. 2021, 9-7-1, made the playoffs.
And this 2020 is without Ben. They're moving on from Ben.
Exactly. 2020, 12-4, made the playoffs. 2019, 8-8. 2018, 9-6-1.
Let me stop you too, Tone. Remember this. This is in the era of Peyton Manning and Tom Brady.
2017, 13-3. Made the playoffs. 2016, 11-5. 2015, 10-6. 2014, 11-5. Like, why would I ever fire a guy who keeps me in it like this? He is literally a quarterback away. He's a quarterback away
from winning a Super Bowl. Hey, let me ask you this. You think the Steelers are going to hire some nobody coach if they had Hurts in the building? Explain to me, Tone, once again. I heard you saying, hey, I think Sirianni's going to be fired. What? So what? Tone, so what?
Here's the thing, right? Jalen Hurts, whether people want to admit it or not, Jalen Hurts was a project.
Yes.
And
as was Lamar Jackson.
Right. And believe it or not, most quarterbacks are projects, believe it or not. But nonetheless, Jalen Hurts was a second-round project that Shane Steichen coached up to the level that he did, right? And to me, when you have a quarterback who's still developing and who's raw, like Jalen Hurts was and still is to an extent, despite the numbers, despite the statistics, you still have to continue to nurture that talent. Progression and development is never a destination. It's a journey. And I feel like they did not do right by Jalen Hurts, this year with their hires. They needed to put people around him, experienced people that's seen things he hasn't seen. You know how many times these coordinators said in press conferences, "Oh yeah, they threw something at us that we didn't expect." They don't even realize how much they're just vomiting, how much they're inexperienced. They don't even realize it.
Hey, Vlad,
Jalen
Hurts had a bad season this year.
Come on, man. Like
he had almost 20 turnovers.
Right. Those turnovers overshadow everything he's done.
Get this.
Just how if it was Josh Allen, if it was Dak Prescott, 20 turnovers, 19 turnovers overshadows whatever you've done. That's the reality. And I'm a Jalen Hurts guy. And I hate feeling like I have to qualify how I feel about Jalen Hurts as a player because people are emotional and they can't get their head out of their ass. The fact of the matter is Jalen Hurts had a down year. The fact of the matter is Jalen Hurts was a turnover machine this year. Do I think he's a turnover machine for his career? No. But this year he had a bad year and he has to wear it just like everybody else does.
Okay. Well, then let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Who is he? 2021?
That's a great question.
2022 or 2023?
I'm willing
because
to
now get this. Every coordinator has a book on him, and every coordinator has a book on how the Eagles are developing him. Because get this, right now, he is not just a turnover machine. He's a predictability machine. So, and what he does on the field right now, because they have inexperienced coaches with him. And again, I pointed out to you, Tone, Ravens get Todd Monken. You bring his buddy in. I mean, and it results in an MVP for Lamar.
Right. So to answer your question, right? 2021 versus 2022 versus 23, right? So this is how I process it. So work with me on this. Jalen Hurts was drafted in 2020, right? He only started 4 games, I think, something like that.
I mean, they were mop-up games.
Right. So 2020, wash.
I watched him in New Orleans, Atlanta, or something like that. Maybe those kind of games.
Right. So 2021, he gets his first shot at being a starter. Starts off 2-5. Things are a little rocky. Shane Steichen takes over. They finish the season 9-8, make the playoffs. All things considered, all right, 9-8. You don't have a defense. You only got one receiver really, and you make the playoffs. Okay, so he showed strides as that season went. So that's then. 2022 comes. He elevates from 2021 to 2022. So for me, I look at 2021 and 22 as part of the same development arc. So when you ask me who is he from 21, 22 versus 23, I don't really say I more so look at it as who is he versus 22 versus 23 rather than all 3 of those years in comparison to each other. I look at 2021 and 2022 as this perpetual state of motion as far as development. I feel like the hiccup comes in 23, and that's where I'm questioning. Okay, who is Jalen Hurts? Who is Jalen Hurts? Is he the 2022 Jalen Hurts or the 2023 Jalen Hurts?
I think Jalen's the same guy.
That's how I'm looking at it.
I think Jalen's the same guy. I just think you got poor coaching around him.
No, agreed. And you can actually tell that based off of the way his stats are structured. He's thrown for more. He's technically thrown for a little bit more yards.
He's a 4,000 yard passer. If they would have kept him in, he'd have got it.
Yeah, he's thrown for more yards this year. He's thrown the ball. He's had more attempts, more completions. The completion percentage is the same, even with more attempts. So that tells me he's accurate, right? With more opportunities, he's accurate. Touchdowns went up, right? Rushing attempts did go down. Rushing yards did go down. But the anomaly really is the turnovers. That's the part of the game that is making it. That's the part of the game that we ask ourselves, who the hell is this guy?
I'm going to tell you, though, Tone,
which in my opinion is a combination of poor decision making and also what he's being coached to do and what not to do.
Okay, that's that last part there. The fact that they have limited him in rushing attempts has caused the turnovers to go up. Because when you take part of the weaponry away, that'd be like taking cannons off of a battleship and just going to battle with one cannon, and you're fighting another battleship with 10. Why are you doing that? You're putting your guy at a disadvantage in every game. And I'm going to say this to you. There is one thing that definitely happened with the coordinators early in the season, because if you think about it and you look at the schedule, most of the time we played against guys who were head coaches or some really good coordinators, even Brian Flores with Minnesota. What they ended up doing and finding out with Jalen Hurts, his inability, or the Eagles' inability to have blocking backs. And this goes back to Howie. DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny
cannot block at all
in pass protection.
Did you see him yesterday?
They were terrible.
Penny was Swift didn't play, but Rashad Penny was awful.
Terrible
in pass blocking.
I told everyone that's why he didn't play in Seattle. That kid Carson played because he was better in pass protection. That's why they drafted Walker. He could not play because he's a poor pass protecting guy. And then on top of that, because of Steichen and the RPO, remember something on the RPO again. When you're doing this, you're going to one target. I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is a one-read guy, but I am saying the development that they did with the RPO made that one read open because the fear of him getting out in the perimeter created the space. Well, when you take the RPO away, Tone, you close that space.
Did you know this year, out of all the quarterbacks in the NFL, Jalen Hurts has completed has had to complete throws of the highest difficulty. He's had there's a stat for it, but Jalen Hurts is among quarterbacks who've had to complete passes under the most difficult circumstances.
Remember I told you in the Seattle game, and remember it, dude, they're telling him where to throw the ball. And here, the double coverage of AJ versus Devontae being wide open. Why don't you throw to the easier, even if it falls under the sticks? Punt, play defense. Let's play some, special teams was good. There's 3 parts of football.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you putting that kid in a position? That's what I said all year. They're making that kid have to throw, and when you're not able to protect and your pass plays are not developing down the field because you're not running. Dude, Jalen Hurts is the most frightening weapon that's in that offensive huddle. Now he's not. He's not. You don't think he's as frightening as he was a year ago, do you?
No. They done him a disservice with changing his play style. He also doesn't have. Let's call it what it is too. He didn't look as explosive this year either. He didn't look that explosive this year
because they told him not to be.
So I think
the money.
Even when he runs, he doesn't look like a guy who believes in what he's doing.
Yeah. And that's the inexperienced coaches that I said they hired for. Hey, you want to get on Sean Desai and Brian Johnson? They're checker pieces.
Mm-hmm.
They're like checker pieces on a checkerboard. Are you kidding? They don't really matter. Okay, right. This is not what your inability to put quality people in places of power comes back to the number one problem that you have in your organizational structure. That is that there are people in your building that believe that they have to have complete control over every facet of what you do on Sundays.
You said something interesting earlier,
it just doesn't. You can't. How about this, Tone? You can't win Super Bowls from the owner's box. You can't.
Agreed.
But get this, they're taking full credit. They're taking full credit for 17 when actually they just wrote checks.
You said something really interesting earlier too. You said the fact that this coaching, you basically said, I think it was something along the lines of Howie and Jeffrey are quiet right now, and they're just sitting back. Excuse me. They're sitting back, right? Excuse me. I got this cough I can't get rid of. Anyway,
I hear
nonetheless,
you, I'm drinking water.
Right. They're plotting a strategy, right?
Yeah.
And me and Rob were talking about this. We think this is what they're going to do. They're going to try to approach it with the same gloves as they handled the Doug situation. Hear me out on this. Remember, before Doug got fired, they called him in and they said, "Hey, what's your vision? What's your plan?" And they heard him out, and they said, "Look, that's cool, but this is what we want you to do." Doug didn't play ball. So therefore, Doug lost his job, right? I think they would feel better if Nick hung himself. That way, they don't have to bear the brunt of firing a guy, because that will put the onus on them. I think what's going to happen is whenever the season ends, and it's going to end soon, they're going to have a meeting, and they're going to ask him, "What's your plan? What do you think is the next move?" And if they don't like what they hear, they're going to say, "Well, this is what we want." And you know what he's going to do? "All right, okay, all right, sounds good. All right, let's do it. Let's do it."
Remember what I told you when he first got the job? He's not going to fall for that, because Frank has prepped him how to get the job and how to keep the job. So he's not going to do that because he doesn't have the equity in the building.
Exactly. And that was the difference. And that's the key difference. So
and his best thing, in my opinion, if they start messing around too much with him, would be to resign. Because if they fire him, having made the playoffs 3 years in a row with a 680 win percentage, I mean, everyone that's going to potentially hire him down the road will ask the question, what happened?
What happened?
Yeah, don't put your fate in the hands of people who have handled your fate. You need to grab a little bit of it yourself. Now, do I think he'll do that? I don't.
Believe it or not,
I think he'll go along. What?
No, I was saying, believe it or not, the best thing for both sides is if he resigns.
If he resigned.
Believe it or not. That's that's probably the best situation.
Another opportunity, okay, would be something, because there's going to be let me say this to you. If Nick Sirianni resigned, with all the job openings that are there, I could see Josh Harris hiring him. I mean, when you have that kind of win percentage and you put Alec Halaby in the building, it'd be kind of the same thing. So, I mean, think about if I'm his agent, I would really go like this. Hey, if they start those Doug Peterson conversations with you, you've got to think about your long NFL coaching career here. Do you want to go back to being an assistant coach, or do you want opportunities to be a head coach? How about like out in and by the way, he's got a history with the Spanos family. So, I mean, but if he gets canned, losing 6-7, and he makes the playoffs 3 years in a row, that's going to be tar on his coaching resume. Also, that I don't know he can get off of.
Also, let me ask you this. Let's take it a step further, right? This is a very interesting case study. When it comes to Nick Sirianni, right? Let's say he did end up on the open market. People saw the difference in 21, 22 versus 23. People see, oh, Shane's not there. You don't seem the same. How much does that go against him if he ever was to hit the open market?
It doesn't, because coaches leave all the time, and we see quarterbacks like Josh Allen have a fallback when Brian Dable left Buffalo.
Okay.
I mean, it happens all the time when you lose quality people. Hey, don't you think Mahomes took a step back without Bieniemy in Kansas City?
Right.
Okay, so now here's something to think about too. Hey, you're asking me to do something. You know how many coaches have done? Get back to a Super Bowl after losing one, and we were still 11-6. I mean, hey, last year we were 14-3.
That's
We're
big.
11-6.
That's big
Winning
picture
6
talk, though.
playoffs in a row. New
Right.
coordinators. They put all these guys in the building. Quite frankly, get this. I'm 25. I'm 25-9. Really?
That's big
Remember,
picture
you got
talk.
to look at the people on the outside, how they see
Right.
it looking in, because we're close to it.
Right.
Living in Chicago right now.
And also, as an agent, and as they get paid to do, they can spin it however they choose.
They're gonna spin it that
They're
way.
They're going to spin it. This is really interesting because you're paying. We've been paying attention to this team all season, and a lot of the issues have been written on the wall. We've just been trying to paint over it. And Nick Sirianni, he's a guy that at one point I gave a lot more credit to than he deserved. And now he looks like a guy that's losing his locker room, or that's lost it, or even if he had it in the first place, he looks like a guy who's just hanging on for dear life. And because he's so willing to go along with Howie and his antics, I really don't know how this thing ends.
Tone, you know why I've never had respect for him?
Howie
he never
or
had
Nick?
a defining role.
How you talking about Nick?
Yeah.
Okay.
He never had a defining role. And being a cheerleader is not a role.
Also, here's another thing too, right?
When they took the play calling away from him, what was his role? Locker room cheerleader? That's not a coach.
I'm glad you said that, right? Because here's the thing. The one thing that Philly and a lot of people prided Nick Sirianni on was his ability to connect and motivate, things like that, right? That's what that's the credit we gave him. But
that's the narrative they put out.
Right. That's the narrative that we ran with, right? Let's say that. That's the narrative that we all ran with. That he was a motivator.
Well, the
he was
organization put that out too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, we ran with it. So we followed suit.
Okay, not a problem.
So my main point is in saying that, who are you when that's no longer working? Who are you when your biggest asset, who are you when your biggest gun is no longer working? Who are you when your best when your best tool is no longer working? Who are
Chip
you?
Kelly.
How effective are you when your best skill is no longer useful? And that's where he is right now. I don't think they can afford to bring him back, knowing that these players are not responding to him anymore. I understand what you're saying, though, that this is a top-down thing. I'm with you 150%. But as of right now, they're not responding to that man.
That's why they're going to win 5 games in 2 years.
And that's
because they're going to bring the same guy in.
Man,
you're talking about repeating the same behavior, just with a different dude. It's the same waiter giving you the same shitty food, dude.
And then this goes back to what you said earlier. How much faith do we have? You asked me this early on. How much faith do we have in Jeffrey Lurie or Howie Roseman looking in the mirror and taking accountability? Jeffrey, I have a smidge of faith. Howie, I have none. That's why it has to start with Jeffrey.
He's done it.
And he's shown a propensity to do it before. He wasn't afraid to move off of Andy. He wasn't afraid to cut ties with Chip. And he damn sure wasn't afraid to fire a Super Bowl head coach.
He also had the nuggets to hire Chip.
That part too. So
that's big.
It is.
Because that resulted in Roseman, Chip going upstairs going, get this guy out of here. And he did it.
I'm glad you said that. And he did it. So that tells me, yeah, Jeffrey got love
to it.
Jeffrey has love for Howie, but to what extent? Clearly, he
doesn't have. He loves the guy, but he's not going to go to the extent of like 4-11-1 kind of teams.
And again, that begs the question: what are the odds Jeffrey Lurie takes a long look in the mirror this offseason?
Not good. because they were just in a Super Bowl 11 months ago. They've been to the playoffs 3 years in a row.
And
he's 25-9 in 2 years.
And
3
guess
years.
what?
I mean,
and that's and it's the same thing that can make you laugh can make you cry. The same thing that you pride yourself on can also be the same thing that leads to your demise.
He'll be fired by week 8 next year.
Here's the sad part about it. With all that success that we're talking about, that can be the same reason why that same success can hold you back. You want to know why? Because you're not being honest with yourself, with who you are and where you actually are. I ask the same question whenever we talk about the Flyers and Keith Jones and those boys and Daniel Briere, all those guys over there. Whenever we talk about the Flyers, and every time we talk to a Flyers guy, I ask them the same question because I think it's important. How difficult is it for organizations to be honest with themselves based off of where they are?
You know who your best GM is in Philly? Do you know who your best GM is?
Who?
It's Dave Dombrowski. I worked with Dave in Miami.
That's the Phillies guy, right?
What?
From the Phillies.
He's the Phillies guy. I worked with him when he was with the Marlins. And he worked with a guy by the name of Larry Beinfest. And Larry Beinfest worked under, Dombrowski was the guy that was responsible for what. Do you know that the Marlins have never won a National League East crown, and they've won 2 World Series? And you know why he did? He was able to put deals together. He was able to do free agent signings. He was able to have a great farm system because you know why? He doesn't put up with anybody's bullshit and it stops on his desk. However, he empowers his managers to be managers, to go out and win.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he is a sensational GM. By the way, he won in Detroit. Mm-hmm. He won in Miami. This guy, he's the guy that found Miguel Cabrera. And so I'm sitting there. Miguel Cabrera is one of the greatest right-hand hitters in our generation. 500 home runs, Triple Crown winner, 3,000 hits. And you know what they said in Miami about him because they tried tar and feathering his reputation? They called him a fat drunk. You know what Dombrowski said? Well, if that's a fat drunk, I'll take him in Detroit. And but he empowers people. Howie empowers himself and just doesn't trust. That's right. He won in Boston too. Dude, that guy, Howie is not a GM. It's funny. I saw somebody bring something up in here and they go, well, Doug Peterson and those guys parted with mutual understanding. Yeah, you know why they parted with mutual understanding? I'll tell you why they did, Tone. Because they didn't want shade being thrown on the way out the door.
Of course. So look, my final take is this, and then we'll get our guy JAKIB on. I'm really excited to hear what he has to say. But my final take is this: the Philadelphia Eagles season will end next week, and I have a hard time believing that there is light at the end of this tunnel because of the ego of some of the people up top.
This is not a Nick Sirianni thing, or like I said, and I think you understand it. It's not a Nick, it's not a Desai, it's not a Brian Johnson. This is how the organization operates.
Exactly.
And whether you fire Nick or not, they're gonna hire Nick Sirianni 2.0.
And guess what? As Eagles fans,
philosophical mentality.
And as Eagles fans, we have to sit here and bank on Jeffrey Lurie putting his foot down in this organization. And I don't know how much I'm willing to bet on that this offseason because of the prior success. And you can get punch love drunk on it.
Before I get to JAKIB, I'll ask you one last time this question. I've asked you twice, and I'll do it again.
Mm-hmm.
How many Super Bowls do you think that Jeffrey Lurie has left on the table now, moving away from Doug Peterson?
Oh, since Doug Peterson or since he's on the team? Which one?
Since he was in Philly.
I'll say this. I think Jeffrey Lurie.
If he's there 11 months ago, he wins.
Okay. So since Doug left.
6 years.
So since Doug left, got you. So it's been 6 years. Maybe 2?
2.
Maybe 2.
And how about this? Would you feel better about the progression of Jalen Hurts in a couple of years?
Of course I would.
The way he runs it?
Of course I would. I don't trust Nick Sirianni right now. I don't trust anybody right now. Like,
Yeah.
I don't trust nobody. Big Sills, come on, man.
Hey, Tone, I appreciate it. I want to get to G. I can't wait to hear this.
Yes, sir. Great talk as always.
You bet, my friend. I appreciate it. You know, I told you this. Now let's get to